All right. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great day today. Sorry about the little bit of the glitch. It kicked me out of the live stream. So hopefully we've got this connected and we're going live and everybody's picking up on it. So if you can hear me, if you could just type into the chat and let me know that you're picking us up, that would be wonderful. Thanks very much for joining us today. We've got quite a gathering. We've got over 120 people that are actually scheduled to come in for our live session today. So that's pretty awesome. We're really excited about that side of things. Now, just want to wait for just a couple of minutes because we've got a few people that are coming in. We're just not sort of seeing everybody sort of connected into the live stream. I think people may have been onto the old one that's connected. So we'll get started in just a moment. And so just thanks for joining us today. All right, so we're picking up a few more people coming in. My apologies again for the delay in everything, but glad we got everybody connected. So one of the key things that we want to sort of just have a brief little chat of with regards to today's session is we want to be taking a look at Google Analytics 4. Now, we probably need to sort of be, off in the distance to have not really been able to pick up on the evolution that is GA4 and the importance of what's been going on within this space. Google Analytics 4 is a complete transition to the way that we've been dealing with analytics in the past. And it's, a lot of organizations are going to be a little bit behind and maybe a little bit challenged with some of the issues that they're dealing with because it is requiring a complete reevaluation of everything that we're looking at with regards to Google Analytics and with regards to sort of bringing all of that together. So when we think about Google Analytics, and just before we sort of get started down that pathway, we do have some new people that we haven't dealt with. So for those of you that I haven't had in one of our programs before, my name is Lyle Wetch. I am an associate professor of marketing at Memorial University in St. John's, as well as the director of the Digital Academy and the principal consultant of Digital Marketing Consultants. So when we think about what's going on within this space, there's a lot of information that we're going to be covering on an oral aspect that's not necessarily going to be there, but there is a link where you can access the handouts to sort of see some of the key information that's contained and to supplement that. I will be providing this link to you in an email later today, as well as a link to the recording of the session that we've got. Now, when we think about this transition that we're under right now, it's a combination of two things. Number one, a lot of organizations might view it as being a challenge. They might view it as being a situation where there's a lot of issues going on. There's a lot of elements that are sort of happening within the space, and they're like, oh my God, how do we go about doing this? And just really getting overwhelmed by the whole aspect of what's happening within the space. But more importantly, I think that organizations need to think about Google Analytics and to think about the structure of where everything is, that is really on the basis of the opportunity that exists. What is the opportunity that we've got to be able to work within this space? Because a lot of organizations that we've worked with over the years have Google Analytics deployed. They may be generating reports, but they really haven't optimized or given much thought to what's going on within their metric strategy, within their program, to be able to bring everything all together and to be able to sort of say, hey, this is how we need to think about our analytics. And as we're moving into a much more data-driven world, it's really becoming more and more important for organizations to have a clear digital plan, a clear strategy, a clear idea of how to put all of this together. So they think the biggest mistake that organizations might make with the migration from Universal Analytics to GA4 is to try to replicate what you had in UA into the new Google Analytics. First of all, it's going to be impossible because it's a completely different platform, completely different thinking. But this also allows you to miss out on the opportunity of really taking a look and say, how can we reevaluate what we're doing? What metrics are really important to us? What are the questions that we really want answers to that are going to drive us to that next direction, that are going to take us to where we need to be and to get us the answers that we want? In many ways, Google Analytics 4, GA4, is going to give you the ability to get answers that you didn't even know you could get the answers for. So it may invent brand new questions that you're coming up with as we sort of take a look at it. But one of the things that we want to do is to sort of, let's start off by taking a look at a historical timeline and sort of really get a feel for where this has happened, because it may seem that GA4 has popped up overnight, but it's been a long time coming. And in addition to that, we have to understand why some of the older versions aren't necessary, and why they don't fit with today's business practices and today's tools, the way that we work with things. So if we think back to 2005, back in 2005, Google purchased of what was going on, what was happening, and they started to bring in things to really start to track what was happening on people's websites. You have to remember, it really wasn't until the late 90s when people sort of started to think, do we really need to have websites? Where do we need to go? In 2009, they sort of developed Urchin a little bit, and they released the first version of Google Analytics that started to bring in event tracking, multi-channel funnels, real-time reporting. And this is where the code that we started to see on our websites was ga.js, the JavaScript code. Then in 2014, we migrated to Universal Analytics. And so this is where UA gave us the ability to sort of say, well, let's get some more information. We started to get custom dimensions, custom metrics. We started to get more ability to do attribution reporting and to lay things out. Now, Universal Analytics was sort of the mainstay for organizations at this point. But then we also had Firebase Analytics came into play, which was an app-based analytics platform that Google acquired with App plus Web. This was really where Google recognized that, hey, you know what? It's not all about the website, but they were really driving it from an app perspective. So In order to use App Plus Web, you needed to have a mobile app. And so it was a very unique audience, but it was the precursor of what was to come, and recognizing that a website-based analytics platform was not going to be the key that was going to address everything. In 2020, almost 2 years ago, or almost 2 years when it sort of was released at this point, GA4 was launched. And this was a game changer. So the fact that we're needing to be moving to GA4 rapidly, which we're going to talk about shortly, is a key element that comes into play, but it's not new. We've moved on from the GA.js, from analytics.js, and now we're into our new JavaScript tag, which is the gtag.js that many of you may have already sort of installed. So this is where the evolution has come, and it's interesting because right now, of the websites that actually have analytics deployed on the website, 85% of them are using Google Analytics, which is not surprising considering how powerful it is and the fact that for most organizations, it's going to be free. But now we come to the critical point. The main reason why we probably have so many people registered for this live stream session, and that is the fact that Universal Analytics is on its deathbed. Starting July 1st of 2023, which is just a few months away, Google Analytics will no longer be collecting data through Universal Analytics. So if you have not yet made the transition to GA4, you will immediately not have any more data. And in addition to that, about 6 months after that point, all of your historical data for Google Analytics in the Universal Analytics aspect will be deleted. So probably by the end of December, you will not have any historical data, any historical analytics. And so this is creating a bit of a challenge. Now, there are ways through using a platform called Supermetrics to be able to draw the information historically out of your existing Universal Analytics account into BigQuery. For those organizations that may have been using Analytics 360, Analytics 360 would allow the export of data, but that's the paid version, the real expensive. This is one of the reasons why the first milestone that really existed for organizations was this past July 1st, 2022. That was the point where organizations optimally would have had their GA4 deployed, because that would then give them the ability to have a year of parallel data running between their Universal Analytics and GA4, so that when Google Analytics stops collecting data from the UA side, you would still, in August of next year, you would have the ability to do year-on-year comparison, because you would have a big chunk of this all being put together and integrated. So that's a really important part of where we're at. Now, if you are one of the larger organizations that's using the premium version of Analytics 360, this is where they've got a little bit longer, because there was just some updates and changes that occurred to the 360 suite. So they're giving everyone until October 1st before the existing version of Analytics 360 stops collecting data. So if we work on a 6-month timeline, their historical data, if they haven't downloaded it into BigQuery, is going to be disappearing on April 1st. So this is why when we get to the later part of the presentation, we're going to talk about why you need to make sure that if you haven't already done so, getting GA4 onto your website yesterday is one of your most important actions that you need to take, because you want to have as much parallel data running, so you're able to bring everything together. So that's going to be a real important piece as we start to deploy. Any questions on the timeline of what's going on there? If you do have any questions, please just type them in to the chat window or the comment window, and we'll be able to see them and be able to respond. If I do see anything pop up, I'll take a break and go through. So, what are the main differences? There are massive, massive differences between these two, which is one of the reasons why Google couldn't just release this as an update. They needed to release this as an entire brand new ground up rebuild, because what we had historically didn't really work with today's environment. So if we look at things in a universal analytics world, it was all based as the desktop being the central point. Remember, it came out in the early 2000s in its initial stages. It was all based on the desktop. It was based on the website. It was all about which pages did you view, how many sessions did you have, how many clicks did you get. It was very rudimentary traffic data that was based on the website. All of your data setup and how you controlled what you were going to be able to see and where everything came together was done through views. And the big one is it was all based on cookies. The fact that we've put a cookie onto somebody's computer, and every time they came and tracked onto our website, we could track them and say, hey, that cookie is back, so we know who you are, and we could get a little bit of data from that standpoint. The metrics were more based on, are we getting people onto the site? Are they seeing our information? And there wasn't a lot that we could do on different devices. If you did have mobile apps, as an example, they needed to exist in their own unique property, and it required techniques using things like roll-up reporting to be able to bring everything together, which was a little bit more challenging. GA4 is completely different. GA4 is focused on cross-device, not on what you're doing on an individual website. It's about the fact that you're coming in through mobile devices, desktop, other platforms, other tools that are coming in. So its main tracking is on the basis of events. And you're able to bring information in from multiple devices into one piece of data. So it makes understanding your audiences a lot more. It is not entirely cookie-based. There still is the option to incorporate cookies into how your data is collected, but it is not about the visit. It is about the individual. And that is really a big key, is where we go. As far as your metrics, it's about engagement. It's about how are those people interacting as opposed to simply traffic. It's about understanding individual behavior without having individual personal identifiers. And so it's really set up for the next generation. We've got a question about, we're currently running promotions and planning a website overhaul. Should we wait until we do the transition to GA4? No, you really want to get that data being collected, because when you do your website overhaul, you're going to be then making that transition, and that same code is going to be installed on that website, and it would just be another data stream. And so I would say get GA4 on yesterday, because you want to have that historical data. And with GA4, it will allow you to sort of see how does the data that you're collecting on your new website, compare with your old website, because you're going to be able to have all of those data streams in one property. So it's still urgent that you get it in right now. And so the key thing here is you're not removing universal analytics. You're leaving it in place. It's still going to keep running, but you're going to be running GA4 as a parallel property where you're going. As far as creating a new website or updating an existing website, you're not changing your website. You're just going to change the analytics code that you've got in the back end. You're just going to change how you're getting the data that's letting you know what's happening and what's going on. So there's no need to start a new website unless you've got one already planned or in place, but you definitely want to get GA4 out there. The biggest piece of what's driving the importance of GA4 right now is that it is designed for a privacy-centric, cookieless world. We're seeing changes that are happening, browsers that are not going to be collecting cookies, including Chrome, which was going to stop collecting third-party cookies in 2022 or 2023 rather, but that has been delayed now to 2024. So we're seeing changes with Apple devices putting privacy controls in. We're seeing all sorts of information going on globally through GDPR and other programs to protect individual privacy, and users are becoming more concerned. So that creates a challenge when we're dealing with universal analytics, which relies on cookies to be able to get the data. GA4 is the piece that's going to allow you to bring all that together. So a couple of things is GA4 was designed for privacy at its absolute core. It does not rely exclusively on cookies. And the big part that helps it be compliant with any privacy legislation that we've got coming in to either Canada or the GDPR or anything is it gives you much more granular control over data collection and usage. You've got the ability to define what pieces of data it's going to retain, even down to changing the retention period for how long certain pieces and types of data are retained for. So it gives you a lot more control to meet the privacy legislations that are out there. And here's a big one. GA4 does not store the IP addresses of visiting devices. So this was a challenge that a lot of organizations were concerned about from a privacy perspective, is even if you had things where you weren't collecting cookies, the fact that it's stored an IP address might be able to personally identify the individual that was using it if they were using that same device that comes into play. So GA4 removes that privacy concern that people had. So this is where, in today's privacy-centric, cookieless world, GA4 is an absolutely no-brainer. We've had a comment asking, how do you get GA4? Well, it's free. You just have to install the code on the site. And at the end of the session, we're going to be talking a little bit about how you go about doing that. Now, when we think about the cookie status of what we've got, Firefox, which is used by 4% of internet users, blocked third-party cookies back in 2019. Safari, which is used by about 23%, blocked third-party cookies in 2020. And Chrome, which is used by 62%, is going to stop third-party cookies by 2024. All right, emphasis on the third-party cookie side. If you didn't join us earlier this year, we did do a live stream on moving to a privacy-centric, cookieless world. I'd suggest that you go and watch that if you didn't have a chance to engage with us when that took place, because that'll sort of give you a little bit more detail about what's going on. The key when we think about GA4 is it is about cross-device, cross-platform customer journeys. Really understanding all the different touch points, all the different places where people will be along the way, and being able to understand that customer journey, not what's happening on an individual platform. And so that's really a big key piece. And it lets us bring data in from multiple data sources through data streams. And so we can bring data from websites, apps, our own platforms, our own internal data can all be brought in and merged into one particular data set. Now, some of the first challenges that we've got is the data is not directly comparable. So the data that you've got, the reports that you've got within Google Analytics, in Universal Analytics, are not the same as those that you're going to have within Universal. So trying to do a direct side-by-side comparison between your UA reports and your GA4 reports is not going to work. It's going to be extremely challenging. And that's why we want to have as much parallel data as we possibly can for our GA4 deployment, and why we want to get it going as much as we can urgently. Now, any existing report systems and automatic emailing of reports that we've got coming in from Google Analytics from the UA side will no longer update come July 1. All of the focus that we've got, rather than visits, sessions, those sorts of elements that we've got, it's now very much event-based within GA4. So it's thinking more about the actions. And this is one of the things that's an absolute pleasure working with GA4, is how it manages events, how it manages conversions, how we deal with tracking, because that used to be one of the most challenging parts of Universal Analytics, was how do you go about getting conversions in place and really tracking all of the data. A lot of the ones that people used to struggle with in UA are now automatic in GA4. So it's awesome at what we're going to be able to understand in a much more easy context. Universal Analytics also brings in an extensive amount of machine learning and artificial intelligence to fill in the gaps. So for the first time in our Google Analytics, we're now going to be able to get predictive modeling. We're going to be able to have the machine learning go, this is a really important part for you. This is where we think this information has come together. So it's going to grow and learn as you use it more effectively. It's going to grow and learn. Your tags that are being installed through Tag Manager are different. So if you've already got Tag Manager deployed, that's awesome, because that makes it easy to deploy your new tags that you need to be able to get GA4 data being collected. Now, one of the other reasons why it's super important that GA4 is running in parallel and that everything is being put in place is the fact that it is absolutely critical that it's still evolving. It is definitely not a finished product. It's changing constantly, and we're getting closer to what's going to be a finished product and get us to where we want to be, but it's not quite there. The pace is constantly changing. In 2021, there were 16 updates in 2021. It have been 12 updates just in the past 4 months. So this is a huge key where there's been massive changes with what's been going on. So, we're seeing all these changes, everything that's happening. Any questions on anything so far? All right. Any of you already have GA4 deployed on your actual site? Okay, So doesn't seem like a lot of people have GA4. Some of you do, which is great. So we're just getting that idea. Yeah, everybody's getting in touch. No, but my agencies are getting a massive phone call right now. So yeah, we see a lot of that happening and a lot of changes going on in that place. So that's a pretty awesome standpoint with where we go. So that's sort of some of the fundamental changes that are going on within that space. So what we want to do now is to talk about some of the really awesome things, some of the key new features that we have available that's coming in. For those of you that don't have it installed but are waiting till you launch your new website, I would still throw the GA4 code on right now so that you've got some sort of parallel comparison that you can do. It's a super easy thing to be able to sort of merge those data streams, which is one of the big keys that are there. So let's take a look at some of the key new features that we've got happening within the space. So one of the things that we've got the ability to do is we've got the ability to work with what are called user-defined audiences. And so this is where, rather than focusing on stuff that is, one of the big things that we've got, from this is we can create our own audiences. We can define how their audiences are going to be. And that's one of the challenges that we need to take a look at. This gives us the ability to create much more specialized segmentations. And if we have elements of our website where people do verifications and log in, we're going to be able to use the actual IDs that are based in that are going to be able to bring that together. And so this is one of the key things that we want to take a look at, is how do we go about bringing these audiences and thinking about our unique audience and thinking about what's happening within that stance. And so this is really a key piece that we've got sort of going forward. And it's really pretty awesome from that standpoint. One of the other things that we're dealing with when we take a look at this perspective is we're able to get answers to the why questions a lot better. We're able to now have the ability to explore and drill in. One of the biggest things that we see with a lot of people is that in the past, it was all sort of looking at the reports, and the reports didn't tell you why things were happening. It was simply telling you what had happened. And that's one of the big pieces that we needed to drill into the data, to delve into it a lot further, to really getting a lot better idea about what is actually happening and to understand why those things were taking place. And that's one of the things that we really want to sort of explore, is to understand how we can start to take a look and get better understanding in our reports. And this is where one of the most powerful sections is explorations. Explorations is a big part about what GA4 is based on, and that means we're going to be able to get the answers that we're looking for. We're going to be able to get the key details. So when we think about explorations, let's sit back up here. There's 6 different types of explorations that we can go through as we sort of drill in. We've got free form, where easier than ever before, if you want to try to see what's going on, all we need to do is to simply drag and drop variables that we're interested in. These could be dimensions or metrics, and that's going to give us a whole data analysis going on. So rather than creating individual reports that have all these pieces, we're going to be able to sort of take a look and bring all of this together and try to get a feel for where does this happen. And from an exploratory standpoint, this is amazing. And once you've sort of got something and you find something that, this is really interesting, you simply right click on it and you can turn that into an audience or a segment for future exploration or future analysis. So this is the main focus when we think about GA4, is it's not about what page did people go to, how much time did they spend on a page on our site. It's really understanding about what did different audiences do, what did different groups do, and how do they interact with us across all of our different dimensions. Your funnel exploration, this is sort of typical to what we've seen before, but instead of having 5 steps in our defined funnel, we can now define up to 10 different steps. Let's list different places on our website and say, how do many people go from our homepage to here, to our shopping cart, to our pay side, and really figure out where our drop-off are. We also have the ability to evaluate this from closed funnels that say they have to come in from the front, or open funnels, which mean that they can come in at any point as they're working their way along. Exploring their path to really understand what's going on. A couple that are really key, and that's the segment overlap. And this allows you to compare up to 3 different segments that you've created. Remember, we've got the ability to create those custom audiences or define those custom segments and find where these intersect, where these overlap, and create a new segment from these overlapping groups if it's appropriate. So it's really about understanding those groups of individuals. And user exploration is at an all-time high. But the key is, it is still anonymous individuals. You are not going to be able to take a look and say, Bill has done this, unless you're connecting in a login ID and you're looking at what people are doing once they've logged in. But as far as exploring, you're going to be able to understand what those groups are doing and how they bring together, and even taking a look at cohorts of groups that share a common characteristic, such as a newsletter sign up, which really becomes a key piece. Now, you're also going to have a big feature that was only available back in the paid version of Analytics 360. And now you're going to have the ability, without using a third-party tool, to export all of your analytics data into BigQuery. BigQuery is a Google tool that you have access to that allows you to export your data, store it in the cloud, and combine that website data with, say, your email data, your transactional sales data, and integrate it all within BigQuery and run queries across all of those different data sets, and to really get an understanding about how those different user groups that you've identified within GA4 are engaging and interacting with what's happening, with your other properties. So a huge benefit from that part. In Universal Analytics, it was focused on what is your device ID and what are your cookies that you had, and trying to sort of match these together to get understanding. We look at identity spaces in GA4, and it brings in things such as user ID logins, brings in things such as their device ID or IP or device ID from their browser or from their mobile device, not their IP address. Remember, that's key. And it allows us to also bring in Google Signals. So anybody who may be signed into Google, if you've turned on Google Signals, and it is literally that simple, you say, yes, I want to have Google Signals. And by turning that on, you are now able to take a look and understand that data as an identity. The big thing that this does is it helps to limit duplication of users. If somebody was wiping their cookies and they were coming in multiple times, on a cookie-based platform, you would think that they were different users. So this is going to give us the ability to really understand those multiple users as we go. Things have changed a lot. We're also no longer have views. For those of you familiar with Google Analytics, we used to have our account, our property, and then we had up to 25 views per property. And that was how we segmented information out and how we got down to what people were able to see. We don't do that anymore. Views do not exist, at least at this point in time, within GA4. Remember, it's constantly evolving, so who knows where we're going to end up or what it's going to be when we actually get there. So we're dealing with account and property levels that we have, and what we're able to see and how we're able to see it is all really driven by the GA4 and bringing in that perspective and taking a look at it from that piece. So this is where, as we take a look and we go through, it's important to talk about the data streams because the data streams are one of the keys that's really making this all come together. We still are going to be using our exact same Google Analytics account. That hasn't changed. That's not changing at all. All of our access is going to be managed at the property level, and each property is going to be able to have multiple data streams coming into it. So in the past, you might have had a property that was your English language website and another one that was your French language website. And if you wanted to understand their total experience, you had to get quite complicated and do what was called roll-up reporting. Now, we're able to create a property that has our English website, another property that has our French website, and a third property that has all of our websites. We could even have a fourth property that incorporates our iOS app and our Android app. We could have another property that has everything all together. So your properties are able to have multiple data streams coming into it to be able to understand what is really going on. And so this is where, for those of you that are looking at new websites that are going to be coming on board down the road, if you wanted to have a brand new code for that new website, instead of reusing your existing code onto that website, you could create a property that right now has the data stream coming in from your old site and then simply add the data stream from your new website. So you would have all of that historical data being captured and brought together, which really becomes key. So, questions on the data stream or some of the key new features that's coming in. And no, we're not actually going to be talking about Tag Manager in this presentation. It's not required to be able to deploy GA4. It just makes life a whole lot easier and gives you a little bit more customization and tweaking. So it's more in our in-depth training on this, which we'll talk about later at the end of the session. As far as getting the GA4 code, you get it within your Google Analytics account, and we'll talk about that coming up. Any other questions on the session at this point? All right. So how do we go about getting started into GA4? And so some of you will be partway down this journey. Some of you will not have started onto this journey yet. And so there's a big ways to go. First step is you sign into your existing Google Analytics account. Do not create a new account. Your existing Google Analytics account is all that you need. Everything is going to run under that. You're really needing just to simply create a new Google Analytics 4 property. And that's the key. So, you're just creating a brand new property so that you're collecting data coming into GA4. Then, once you've got that GA4 property, you simply set up a data stream for all of your platforms. So you bring in any mobile apps that you've got, any websites that you've got, you bring them in as far as data streams. You enable data collection either through your gtag.js if you've already got that deployed, or Tag Manager. And then step number 5, which is optional, is you start to add different events, link your Google Ads account so that you're really getting richness of the data. The main thing that you need to do is to make sure you do steps 1 to 4, because at least that's got the bulk of the main data coming in that you've got parallel. As far as we've got a question that says, for a new business, will it take a certain amount of time to build up data? It depends on how much traffic you've got. And so this is where if you get a lot of visitors coming to your site, then you're going to have a lot of data to work with. And so the sooner you get things deployed and the sooner you start collecting data, it's all based on that traffic as you work your way through. So one of the things that's absolutely awesome is that older events that we used to have to try to program and schedule in and track, such as do they scroll, how much do they scroll, and putting all those markers in. Did they watch videos? How much did they watch? Where did they start? Where did they come from? All of that stuff is now all automatically set up. You don't need to do anything. It just automatically collects all those events. And you can customize the parameters of it, even if they're a standardized event, or you can create custom events. So this is where there's simple events that you can have when people log in, or they complete a purchase, or they put in their shipping information, or they begin a tutorial, or they share the content. All of these things are super simple events for being able to add that we've never had before in what we were able to do. When we bring in our Google Ads, by linking it, it actually creates a bi-directional connection. So what this does is it means if you're looking at your analytics in Google Ads, you'll be able to integrate that and see some of the analytics coming in from GA4. If you're looking at your data in GA4, you'll be able to see the analytics data from your Google Ads. So rather than it simply putting your Google Ad data in GA4, you're going to be able to see some of your key metrics and information as it relates to your ad in the Google Ad side. So what we need to do, as we mentioned, is not replicate what we've been doing before, but rather to think about the answers that you need or want and create new reports. Don't try to recreate your UA reports, your universal analytics, because the data is different, the collection is different, and so we really need to start with a fresh, clean slate. Now, as we said, that is both a challenge and an opportunity. It creates a little bit of anxiety in people going, oh my God, I've got to start over again. But think about when the last time was that you did this exercise on your data and thought about what you needed. It's probably been some time. So it's time for a refresh. It's time to take us to the next step. And so that's sort of the key piece of what we've got. Again, you don't need a new version of Google Analytics. You're using the exact same account. You're simply creating a new property that comes together. That's a very important piece that comes into play. Questions on installing Google Analytics. Now, it doesn't go into detail. We could literally spend 12 hours to walk through in detail, and we do actually, to go into all the key pieces that are about doing the installation. There's lots of great help guides on Google, depending upon what type of installations that you're doing or what data streams that you're working on. Our goal in this presentation today was to try to sort of give you a key idea about what GA4 is, why it's such a huge opportunity, and where you want to start making that transition. Now, one of the conversations that we've seen happening online a lot is, trying to figure out, well, do we stay with GA4 if we need to do that? And a lot of people are comparing it to other analytics tools, such as Adobe Analytics. Well, GA4 is free. Adobe Analytics is not. The question is, what are the data? What are the answers that you're looking for? What are the things that you need? And are you able to get them through the free version of GA4? GA4 is quick and easy to deploy, but the optimization is a little bit more challenging, if you will, but it's a great opportunity because we actually get answers that we never thought we would ever be able to find in the past. We get a lot of key answers to where we're going. So, as we mentioned, this has just been a brief introduction into what's going on, what's happening, and where things are. Now, I want to touch base on one question. For those of you who may not have an existing website and you're deploying a new website now, I would not put Universal Analytics on the website. If you don't have any existing data and you're starting off fresh and you're starting off from scratch, then I would just put the GA4 code on and start working directly with that and not even think about what UA was, just like we're not going to study Urchin. So that being said, that's the default. When you go into Google Analytics now, it's going to default you to GA4. You can still get and run parallel Universal Analytics in GA4, but Google hides it behind lots of key places, and it's a little bit more challenging from that side point. Now, as we mentioned, we could spend hours delving into this and really getting into explicit detail, and we actually do. Because this is such an important part for organizations, we are launching on Monday a brand new GA4 certificate. So really taking a look at the time and really going into all of the key pieces. The GA4 certificate is actually 12 contact hours. So one of the key things when we're dealing with analytics is you want to make sure that you've got the time to learn it in small chunks and then go and apply it to your specific situation. And so this is where what we've done is we've broken our live online sessions for the GA4 certificate into 3 parts. Each of these parts has 2-hour live sessions that are done 2 weeks apart. So as an example, we would do a session on a Thursday. The second session would not be until 2 Thursdays from there, because that gives you then 2 weeks to start to bring that information together, get yourself to the next point, and then start working through the next stage. Also, if we take a look, for example, our first part deals with the implementation and setup. How do we go about putting all this, getting all the right options chosen, getting all the right bits and pieces, having everything turnkey and collecting data. But in order for us to start working with all this data, we got to get some time. We have to have it be collected. So this is where each of these parts, we recommend having at least 2 weeks, if not longer, between the sections to give you an opportunity to start collecting data before you move to the next part. So once you've done the implementation and setup, we take a bit of a break, and then you schedule in for part 2, where we focus on how do we set up all our reporting, all of our tracking, all of our events, get our customization for what's appropriate to your organization, and then we give it a little bit of time to sort of start having the reports generate data, the tracking start to do, and then Part 3 is where we take a look at the optimization. In order to be able to optimize our tracking and reporting, we have to have data to be able to work with. So working through that. And so these 12 contact hours are quite spread out over a period of months. And it's really working with you to go through the implementation and put things together. Now, for those of you that may be currently enrolled in the Digital Analyst course, the GA4 course can be part of your electives in the Digital Analyst, or it could be done as a complete standalone offering when we're taking a look at it and bringing that together. Now, we do have a special offer that's there that we're going to be talking to you about in a minute for having come into the live stream session. Now, what we've tried to do over the next 8 months, sort of as we're moving towards the July 1 deadline, is we've tried to schedule multiple options of each of these offerings and spread them out over different days of the week, because some people, Tuesdays may be better, Thursdays may be better, Wednesdays may be better, because these are live online sessions. And we're going to have limited numbers in each session because we're going to be working quite closely together, and it's going to be more of an interactive, working through each of your setups and going through and taking a look. So we're starting mostly this fall with the part 1 with 3 different offerings. One in October, beginning October 6th, one starting on November 2nd, one starting on November 29th. And then last one coming up on April 5th. Part 2, we've got one offering that's going to be done before the end of the year, and that's starting on December 7th, but more focusing on the early part of 2023. And all of the Part 3 optimizations are taking place in 2023, starting in February. And so it's really designed to sort of work with you. Now, our live sessions are timed so that regardless of where you are in Canada, you're going to be able to hopefully connect at a reasonable time. We don't want anybody getting up at the crack of dawn or being stuck at the office quite late as where you go. Now, when we're dealing with Pacific time, it's 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern time is 12 to 2. And in Newfoundland, we're dealing with 1:30 to 3:30. Now, one of the key things, we just had a question that says, take advantage of this even if you don't work directly with GA4. This is where, because GA4 is bringing in different data streams and different information and connecting offline data, and is really about cross-platform behavior, I personally believe that every individual that is involved in the organization should be working with GA4. The property that you work with is going to be very different, because it's not about getting a report. Getting a report doesn't tell you and create that understanding. It's those explorations, being able to bring everything together, which really drives all of the key data and really makes things, take it to that next level. Now, so short answer to that question, I think everybody should be accessing GA4 when you're working within an organization, so that you understand what's happening with your job and what's happening with your audience, so you can be constantly making improvements. Now, during these sessions, people may not always be able to get their questions answered, and they may have more unique, specific questions that they don't want to share publicly in the class. And so what we're also incorporating in are 2 30-minute private sessions spread out over the 3 parts. So it's like scheduling when you have some specific questions for us to sit down and do a private Zoom to really figure out where things are going. We're also going to be offering this as a client training option. So if you've got an organization that's got multiple people that are needing to understand what's going on, We can create a special pricing and do something either online with a flexible scheduling, not really on a fixed piece, or we can even do something in person where we split it into 2 separate one-day training programs, but that starts to involve travel and other aspects from there. Now, what's the bonus? What's the bottom line? Bottom line is for the 12 hours of live in person plus the 2 individual contact sessions is typically $960 plus tax. But when we go live with this program on Monday, and we will be sending you a note out on Monday. We won't be sending anything out tomorrow in recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. But on Monday, when the program goes live and we send the information out, for having attended this live stream session, if you use the code GA4-live, and I will send you an email about this so you've got that, there's going to be a 25% discount for you, which brings it down to $720 plus tax. Now, for those of you who would have already completed the digital analyst program, because this is such a critical piece of what we do, and is going to impact every single person out there that's got a website or an app or any sort of form of device like that, you're going to get a special discount that goes beyond this because you've already done the digital analyst course. So you won't use the GA4 Live. You'll use a special individual code, and you'll be getting a separate email that will be letting you know about that offer. So if you've done the digital analyst program with us, or the metrics, measurement, and analytics, which is the one that was before the digital analyst, just wait, because you're going to be getting a special code that's going to be coming, that's going to be better than that as we go. So I know it's a lot to take a look at. I know it's very overwhelming as we talk about the analytics and the data, but it really is one of the things that is going to give you a key opportunity to start making massive improvements and be infinitely better as we go. So, any particular questions that you've got, any issues, any things that you're need me to sort of reiterate, just to sort of highlight, GA4 needs to be installed ASAP. So you're running that parallel data collection and you're having that information so that you can take it to that next step as you go. As we go and take a look at the different pieces, it's about rethinking what information is important to you. What are the answers that you're trying to gain access to? What are the things that you're really looking to get an understanding of? And, from that perspective, this is going to allow you to explore, to be able to get those answers, to be able to delve into a lot more detail. And just like GA4 is constantly changing and evolving, that's not going to change. Hopefully pace slows down a little bit once July 1 rolls around and we're not getting the same rapid swing. But you're going to be getting much better understanding once you start to rethink what you do, as opposed to visits, page views, time on site, and start thinking about, what did this particular segment do? How did this segment interact across our different platforms? What is this audience really looking for? What is the type of content that this group engages with? And because GA4 is cross-platform, even if you're working in the social side, your social media data can be integrated in and really start to bring this all together to give you a good, a full picture about what is going on as you try to bring things together. So I don't see any additional questions or comments showing up in the comment section that's there. I will be sending a link out later today with the link to be able to review this live stream. If you came in a little bit late, I know we had some issues with the initial link was not the correct one. It went on and started and then flipped over to a different one. My apologies for that. But we will be available if you have any questions as you're going along. But please, bottom line, make sure you get GA4 deployed as soon as possible. Start thinking about your events, start thinking about your data, and take this as what it is, a true opportunity to really expand and get your analytics back on track so that you can start making data-driven decisions, because the capabilities of GA4 are like nothing that we've ever seen before. And it's an amazing tool, but we're going to have a point of transition as we get used to working with it. Trust me, I've been this has been my life trying to figure everything out and trying to get everything sorted. And it's, as you delve in, it's challenging, but amazing. All right. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for joining us today. As again, if you do have any additional questions, please let us know. Other than that, have yourself a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you down the road at some point. Thanks, everyone, and watch for the emails coming from us.